let's move on to our topic for today, which I think is a really interesting
Mm-hmm.
one, which I'm titling Nature-Based Stories,
Yep.
which is basically, there are a couple of things that I'm sort of also basing this on. I sent you the link to an article that I read, um, which is about uh, the role of storytelling in systemic change, how
Mm-hmm.
narrative shape reality, and what it takes to rewrite them. So that was quite interesting because, in our line of work,
Yeah.
how we tell the story, what we're doing, or, because we're trying to change people's behavior. Uh,
Yeah.
I have to say, I don't know if I'm that successful. It's actually really hard to change very entrenched minds about things because, there's so many counter stories. There's the story
Yeah.
of about wealth signaling. People,
Mm-hmm.
are more concerned about that. They're more concerned about social hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
When you try to tell us this new story about quality and ethics and ecology and stuff like that, and people are not so interested. It's quite hard to find a way into the subject. But we're going to fly a little higher and sort of talk
Mm-hmm.
more generally about storytelling. Um, so I want to start with a famous storyteller, Mr. Steve Jobs, and he has this quote that keeps being repeated in many, many a piece where he says the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller.
Right.
And he wrote it in 1994 when he was
Mm-hmm.
not at Apple. He had already left Apple in 85. He was actually pushed out of Apple. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember the story.
Yeah.
And he started a new company called Next. And he was just about to release Toy Story. Maybe this idea of storytelling was on his mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what was interesting is what he was saying actually is what he did when he was at Apple when he returned in 1997. He that's how he brought all these Apple products into the world, like the famously. I mean, I remember one that I watched, which was
Mm-hmm.
the Mac Air. The Mac Air, the really skinny one. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when he did. I remember when he did the presentation. He just walked back to the desk and he came back with like a inter office envelope.
Mm-hmm.
One of those.
There's orange, yellow envelopes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he brought it, and then he pulled out this. It's like
Yeah,
it's
because
usually
he's the magician, right? He's pulling it out of a hat.
right,
Mm.
right? Yeah, but it's also the way he crafts that story with the iPhone. I don't remember this, but I read about it. What he did was he actually, don't forget before this there was no iPhone. There was no
Yeah.
such thing as the iPhone,
It was
right?
just a mobile phone. Yeah.
There was a phone.
Mm.
Apple had created an iPod, which was something that could carry music
Yep.
and stuff. And then there was the internet. So 1990, uh, what year was that iPhone? 87. Well, whatever year the internet was very new, you know.
Yep. Yep.
So he talked about the iPod, and he talked about the phone, and then he talked
Yep.
about the internet. And he kept going on and on about these three things. Then he sort of created a villain
Yep.
in the phone. He said it's really clunky.
Mm.
It's a really old-fashioned thing. And then
Right.
he sort of started to create some suspense about the product, saying it's like a one in a lifetime product.
Mm.
He's not been as excited as he is about this. The last time he
Mm.
came up with the product was the the Mac, the computer.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So then he ends his presentation and he does that famous, oh, and one more thing. And he says,
Yeah.
the iPhone is actually these three things altogether. So
Yes.
that was the
I
punchline.
think that was
Wow.
2007, and I think he had the camera, the Garmin GPS, and a mobile phone all
Right,
built
right.
with one device. That
Yes.
was the.
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember I was using an Alcatel. No, 2007. I was already on a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
I was on a office issued BlackBerry, and you look at a BlackBerry and you look at an iPhone, and you go like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a big
Yeah.
jump, a big jump. Yeah. So yeah, the storytelling, the reveal, the way
Yeah.
he brings you along the narrative of this is archaic, this is present, this is future, and like yeah, you are
Correct.
watching it because you're in that future audience. And I think that's the
So
thing about storytelling.
so
It is
some of
the
the
audience. Yeah,
so
it
some of
is
the
knowing your
adjectives
audience. Yeah.
so some of the adjectives are crafting a compelling story, right?
Mm,
An emotionally resonant narrative
yeah.
rather than just presenting data.
Yeah.
He could have just said it's going to solve this, this, and this, but he didn't. He made it.
That would have
Meaning
been a
he,
Nokia presentation. Nokia would have presented it with data.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's dive a little deeper into it. Um, so actually, there is a science to storytelling. So there are mechanics to it. So there's a neuroscience connection. Modern
Yep.
studies confirm that storytelling is a powerful way to transfer ideas and emotions, shaping how people think and act. Stories tap into the brain's innate biology. So it's biological.
Yeah.
It's structural. It's a biology-driven responsiveness. They are a primary tool for influencing, teaching, and inspiring capable leadership or altering human perception in profound and lasting ways. So, um, and then the second thing is there's some mechanics to it, and then there is actually a chemical part to it. There's there's compelling narratives. If you're
Yeah.
really
The
connected
physical
to the
chemistry,
stuff,
the body
right?
chemistry responds to these. Yeah. Excitement,
Oxytocin,
worry.
dopamine,
Yeah. Happiness.
cortisol. So
Yeah.
your chemistry actually changes when a good story
Yeah.
is being told.
Yeah.
Um, and then then there's this idea of narrative transportation, which is actually just your brain. The
Mm.
because this is actually quite a human thing, right? That we are able to actually go into another place.
Yeah.
We can. That's why we have empathy. We can go into someone
Yeah.
else's, and sort of feel their experience, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
And I
it's a
think
very powerful. Yeah,
reading also as part of storytelling, it I mean, look at Tolkien's work, right? He created
yeah,
whole worlds, whole
sure,
languages, whole feelings, and whole fears of things we don't even know exist. And I think it creates that sense of adventure, and you can
yeah,
form whatever thing in your mind that is
yeah,
scary or not based on what leads you down that path.
sure,
But Tolkien
sure.
describes it very well. But like in Harry Potter, when you talk about the Death Hollows, you're imagining a lot of that, and it can be interpreted in any way. So there is that open-ended storytelling to some extent, and then there's
Yeah.
the very very specific, like crafted ideas that are formed.
It's quite interesting that you actually talk about two, which I have never been interested in. I've never been
Really,
interested in Lord of the Ring. Not
yeah,
interested. Never read the Harry Potter stuff. All that's no, I'm not criticizing it. It's just
yeah,
that it was
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
However, what was like, I vividly remember just as you're now describing. I
Mm,
remember the Matrix, and I remember Blade
yeah.
Runner.
Okay.
Like the world that the Blade Runner created about
Yeah,
falling in love with Andrew. I mean, I was just trapped in my seat. I
yeah,
was in that movie.
yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah,
though it was set in the future. Same with Matrix. Even the Matrix, it was so fantastical, and yet it
yeah.
was believable enough for you to actually put yourself into the story, right?
And I think that's the beauty of storytelling as well. As you listen or you watch or you read, it makes you reflect on what is your perception and what is your reality. Because
The parallels, the
yeah,
analogies and
because
the
you,
parallels,
you
right?
can you can observe like
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance. You can observe how to say just the contradictive ideas that you need to reconcile. Because you may be going down one pathway and then another pathway opens, like is it the red pill or the blue
So,
pill? And
right,
you
right.
reflect on that.
To this day,
Very
to this day,
real.
I even use it like in my Instagram. It's like, do you want the blue salad or the red salad?
Yeah. And it becomes metaphors for all of us.
Yeah, yeah,
Generationally, it becomes a
yeah,
metaphor for younger people who read it and feel like, wow, the Godfather, had like some killer lines. And
yeah.
sometimes their interpretation of it could be a little bit different because the context is, somewhat changed. But yeah, overall, there's a lot of things that transcend through storytelling and cultures. used to sit around the fire and tell stories about geography, about where they went and what hunt they were on and what they brought back. So storytelling has been part of human culture, civilization, from the beginning of time. So we've just
Yeah.
gone into more fantasy. Yeah.
A few more scientific facts about storytelling. So research indicates that facts are remembered up to 22 times more effectively when delivered through a story. That's quite interesting, right?
Mm.
So when you wrap it in a story, and then we'll also return to this because that sort of relates to you because Rimba is
Yep.
actually about facts about 30 animals
Mm.
that you've wrapped into sort of an implied story
Yep.
set in Malaysia in a world of endangered animals. You know what I mean?
Mm.
You said it in this story that makes you want to learn more about those.
Yeah, it's meant to be a scaffolded way for parents to come into the conversation and be the cool person, like, this animal could do this, and we want to enable teachers and parents who play that role for kids so that they don't have to read it from a book. It could be an experience when they go to the zoo. They have a card, they find the animal in the zoo, and then after reading the board, mom says, "Hey, you know what? I've got two more facts that the board doesn't say. And these are the
Yeah,
two things. And how do you think they live in the forest if they need these things? And I think that is the intention behind the literature that we put together for Rimba, because the idea is the more we know, the more we want to protect something. And in Malay, it's called tak kenal maka tak cinta. If you don't love it, if you don't know it, you won't love it.
okay.
So it's really part of our culture, this
Yeah.
storytelling process. Yeah.
The other thing about I think with Rimba is actually the story's sort of in the background because it's also a game.
Yes, it's the game
So
first. Yeah.
you're playing and you're just having fun, and
Mm-hmm.
the story is just on the edge of your perception, and that's really
Yep.
what we're trying to harness.
Yep.
By doing it over and over, we actually are hoping that the kids or parents remember the names of these animals.
Yep.
Start to actually put them into a place like they live in trees or they live near the water.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
mammals, they're birds.
Habitat
You
connection. Yeah. Food chain
yeah,
connection. Yeah.
you're starting to but develop knowledge about them,
Yeah.
but it's also set. So I did read something about gamification and storytelling. So games actually perform better when
Mm.
they're set within this storytelling.
Mm.
I mean, there's games that don't. I mean, games
Yeah,
of
and that's fine. And that's fine.
like Candy Crush. I mean, you're just winning. If you're just winning points.
There's a king in Candy Crush. There is a
Uh,
story.
I don't know. I don't.
We're not aware of the
Okay.
story. We're just playing the game. Yeah.
So that's the other thing I don't do. I don't play games, so it's like I don't get what
Okay.
you do.
Yeah.
Um, then there's also conceptual understanding. Storytelling simplifies complex ideas.
Mm.
So, again, harking back to Rimba, you're telling a complex idea about local wildlife. What is the story of local Malaysian specific wild? Because, don't forget, you're actually trying to teach a kid I mean, we've seen this when we try to teach kids, they're talking about giraffes and lions that don't live here.
Because they don't know
Right.
any better.
Because they're in a world of information that's, it's just been compounded for them.
Okay. For example, we did
Yeah.
that nature class with the kids the last time I was there
Yeah.
during Merdeka. And
For
I
those
taught them
50,
the history
the
of
interns, right?
agriculture. Yeah. And we didn't think it would work, but we did it anyway. So we taught them the history of agriculture. We broke it down into 5 phases. And the fact that they couldn't imagine how did agriculture start when they just had spears and some simple tools. And then so it was very much foraging. And then how it went from foraging to machinery, steam engine machinery to proper diesel generated machinery to technology based monitoring systems with drones. So I think with facts, it can be very boring, it can be very, very dry, it's very individual, intrinsic to learn. But when you weave it into a story and you pique interest through things that challenge assumptions, I think that's when stories have that power of that 21 times,
Yeah.
better remembered, because it's
Yeah.
visual, it's got something that they can reflect against. Like, I think one of the kids, the grandfather had a farm and he goes like, yeah, my grandfather just uses a chunkle by himself, and then the fact that they thought, a person could work for 18 hours without break was like,
because the
okay, I don't
grandfather
think my
did it.
grandfather
Yeah.
can do that, you know. So
Yeah.
and that is the contrast that you want to create when you create stories. They take it
Mm.
in and then they reevaluate, and I think that's the beauty of it.
And
Yeah,
also that is the that is actually the challenge for the storyteller as well. It's like how do you
yeah,
like I mean when you in Rimba you're doing the animal thing. I tend to be more botanical, so I'm trying to talk about local flora, and it's actually
mm,
it's quite difficult to do
yeah,
because we live in this world. We live in a place, Malaysia. It's actually inundated with non-local plants.
mm,
Our public landscaping is largely non-local.
yeah, 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 yeah,
It's just become systemized. They
mm,
want something that's easy, low maintenance. They want
mm,
it to be easy to take care of, easy to get. So the nursery start to develop stock of really things that have no connection to our personal environmental story, our
yeah,
ecological story.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's just quite hard to tell this story. It feels almost like a news story. It's like,
yeah, 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 yeah,
or you're trying to tell a story about, for example, like wildflowers, right?
yeah,
In the West, wildflowers are so romanticized. They're, the occurrence of them, the beauty of
mm,
them. Whereas here, generally, wildflowers are never considered more than weeds. They're just things that are
mm,
just dirty things in the background.
yeah,
Um, we never see meadows. They're just wild spaces or
mm,
unkempt spaces that are overgrown. So you're not attached to them in any sort of positive way. So it's actually quite hard to tell that story.
yeah. I think it's got a lot of roots in colonialism because we were perceived as a resource place. So when you were governed by somebody else that tells you all this land is resource, then you need to make something of it. So you
Yeah.
don't have wild spaces unproductive. And that's
Yeah.
why, to a large extent, the culture that we have developed in terms of having appreciation for wild flowers or
Yeah.
stuff depleted over time. It was
Yeah.
systematically erased, but we still eat our ulams, which are very wild in its essence. You know,
Yeah. But
a large part of the ulams are wild. Yeah,
another related, similar to this is we are also at a different stage of development, you know.
yeah.
So for example, I watched this program about around the around 80 gar- around the world in 80 gardens.
Okay.
Uh Monty Don, quite a famous gardening guy, he went to all these gardens around the world.
Hmm.
And in doing so, you sort of start, you can see, all these very, very Versailles, this
Hmm.
French,
Yep.
very
Palaces.
constructed
Yep.
garden, wild cottage gardens.
Yep.
What was quite interesting is that when he got to Asia, he found that actually gardening was not really a thing. You know, uh, at a lower income level, gardening was very, very much like gardens that slaves had in America. They were just swept gardens. And if you go to a couple garden, there's
Yep. Yep.
nothing
Yep.
there's like a few pots.
Hmm.
It's you don't dedicate your time and your life and your home to developing this beautiful garden. It's just not a
Because we're
thing.
liver centric. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have time. You're at a different level of development. So this is considered very privileged stuff. You got to be rich to
Yep.
be able to be hiring gardeners and stuff like that.
Yep.
So,
And land.
so actually,
Land
yeah,
is
I
a
mean,
privilege. Yeah.
yeah, land. And also, the only place that there were gardens were probably in temples and palaces,
Yep.
and even then, very, very specialized kind of
Mm.
things. So when we think about tropical gardens, what comes up in our head is actually a constructed fantasy of a tropical garden because
Mm.
that Bali garden, that, the
Mm.
Balinese garden
Yeah.
was actually,
Temple.
it, no, it's actually based loosely on a temple, but
Mm.
actually really created by a white Australian
There you go.
as an Orientalist fantasy of
Yeah.
tropicalness. You know,
Even
because you never
Kecak is not.
actually
It's not. Yeah. Kecak the
You
dance.
don't see those
Not
kind of gardens
traditional.
in a temple. Yeah, they're not lush like that.
Mm.
and you don't see like a statue in a lush setting. You know, they're much more precise in where they are, and you
Right,
know,
right.
so
No, but
they're
that's also
more,
so. If you look at temples and what's this churches, you know. So my grandmother, my dad's mom's family, they're all Catholic, right? And when I traveled through India, I did visit some of my grandmother's relatives who were part of the church, whether a nun or a priest. And I visited their church. And you know, churches in India typically have like the journey of Christ, that last walk where he bears the
yeah, yeah,
cross. So
the
it's
Stations of the
very,
Cross. Yeah,
yeah. So it's very very visual, and
yeah,
I feel like those stories were passed down and placed within the church, you know. But if you look at, like, for instance, the Ramayana and stuff like that, they also have like carvings into stone. So sometimes stories were not told by people, but they were told in paintings, in
sure,
drawings,
sure,
in sculpture. And
yeah,
the main purpose is just to keep the narrative alive, and so they keep it very short and very specific, so that it doesn't get adulterated with anything else. So
mm,
storytelling then becomes there's a tool which is the sculpture and the painting, and you know, the memory of
sure.
what it looked like. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
story really transcends just verbal, just written, you know. It's
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by, temples have these very
mm,
complicated sculptures on the outside. And
yep.
I've never really spent the time to really try to understand what that's about. I'm sure
Yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
some.
I think the symbolism is quite consistent across beliefs. Like, I think when you go to a southern Indian temple, when you look at the roof, it's got like the layers. And I think those
Mm,
layers signify like the difficulty to get to nirvana. You know, you have to pass through all these demons to get there,
yeah.
and transcend. And I think even in Islam we have like the seven heavens, Firdaus, my name being one of them. So
Oh,
you know,
really?
it has you know, there is storytelling in these things, and words mean a lot. So some words like ahimsa means to, I think, to accept or to release. So that, you know, and I know people by this name. And it's interesting that we name our children based on these values and virtues that we
Yeah.
want them to aspire to, and that's a version of storytelling. Because we are
Mm.
human, right? It's so, it permeates us in many ways. Storytelling, you know, like even a gift, like oh, by the way, I've got you a birthday gift. Oh, I found
Really?
something. I'm like, this is Chris Perry. So
Okay,
you will
because
get it.
you give good gifts. Your gifts are very, very thoughtful. In fact, I have to write a I have to I'm planning to finish writing a piece about my great grandfather on my other Substack.
Right.
Because you gave me that piece of Pudu jail,
Yes. A piece of
which
the
I
wall.
just
Yeah.
it's so meaningful because that's what he was one of the first European wardens,
Yeah. And that's a
and
story, right? That's
yeah,
your
yeah,
story.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I
And
feel
it's so
like,
funny because it's an informational archaeological dig. You know,
mm,
I find some information about him,
mm,
and I have a sense of his story,
yep.
and then maybe I was like, oh, I'll just go search his name again, and then I'll look around again, and I'll find another little piece. So
Right.
this week, actually, because I keep going back to this piece and just adding a little bit, I actually found the name of his. I always thought he was a Welsh Fusilier because he's got a Welsh name,
Mm-hmm.
but he wasn't. He was actually part of something like a Middlesex or something.
Right.
So, which now opens up another way to search for more information as well.
Yeah. And as soon as you publish that,
Yeah,
somebody else who will be searching for him for some other reason will go like,
yeah.
oh, there's another, morsel of information here, you know? And I think
Well,
that's
actually,
the
so
beauty
it's
of
interesting that you
storytelling.
say that because when I told the story about his father,
Mm, mm.
he ran away from home actually
Oh,
when
wow.
he was
Okay.
yeah. I think his story was he was unhappy. I think his
Yep.
mother died in childbirth or something,
Yep.
and the father remarried really quickly. So I have this sense that he had an unhappy early life, which is why he ran away from home, joined the army, fought in the Boer War, and then found his way into Asia. But this last week I found a letter because actually that's the other interesting thing about stories.
Mm-hmm.
And this modern age, more and more documents are being retained and
Yeah.
scanned. You
Digitized.
know, so there's actually letters in the National Archive in Malaysia with more and more information like this.
Mm.
So I found a letter that describes his application to be a warden and how he was really, really keen to get that. And it seemed as if he was still in South Africa at the
Yeah.
time. Because I guess, I said he went to fight the Boer War. But he said he was keen to do it because he had already married a woman from Singapore.
Ah, okay. So he had
Didn't
a
know that part of the story.
anchor.
Didn't know that. Like, how
Nice.
did that happen? How did he marry a woman from Singapore?
Where did he
Yeah,
get a
yeah, yeah,
Singaporean woman?
exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, so, another part of the story was his father. His father was a photographer, quite a famous photographer in the UK. And I found some information about him through a blog. This guy who wrote, this guy has this blog that specializes in photography. And he
Okay.
was interested in my great grandfather because he was one of the early people who did something called a stereo something. When they did
Mm.
it actually replaced calling cards in the Victorian era. They actually,
Okay.
it used to be a calling card with your name on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when photography came in, I guess it was the early 20th century or late
Right.
19th century, they would actually put a photo. You could have your photo on it, no longer just the name. And he became quite a famous one.
Okay.
There are actually examples of his work in the National Portrait Gallery and stuff like that. So I reached out to him and said, "Hey, can I use a couple of your images?" Because he had
Yeah.
some of his work. And because I'd been researching the subject, I found other photos and he was like, wow. He had never seen a photo of him, for example, which I had found in some archive in Newcastle where he was born and, so on and so forth. So stories also have a way of developing,
Yeah. Yeah.
they start adding
They
up and
layer.
become
Yeah.
bigger stories. Yeah. Okay. But all right. Okay. So we have a very specific interest in storytelling because we're involved in education.
Yep.
So we actually utilize it in, how we are developing our educational program.
Yep.
Y- you and I, we work on nature based, which is working at an eco literacy level because I think
Yep.
basically because we just aren't that literate about ecology and environmentalism. So we are actually trying to develop learning programs to get not just children up to speed on this, but actually even adults, the parents of the children, working adults, corporations, people who are
Yep.
making decisions, actually very poorly informed on the subject. And we're sort of trying to improve that. But you have just started on a new enterprise, which is your
Uh,
own Substack,
okay. Yes.
which is actually going one step higher,
Mm.
where while we work on a more of an introductory level to eco literacy,
Yep.
you are starting to write for someone who's a practitioner in this,
Yep.
right? You're using your experience, stories of your experience
Yep.
to, so they're a little more highfalutin. The vocabulary is a little different.
Yep.
Uh, so that's quite interesting. So I'll put a link to
Yeah. Because the intention is to offer
yeah,
uh teachers, parents, NGO practitioners, or just young career
yeah,
focused people who want more sustainability vocabulary, but not
yeah,
learning it as a module in a diploma.
sure, sure,
So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sharing context. Because I
Yeah,
feel like
also,
this
the
is
thing that's
context. Yeah,
really relevant here is actually your work with Unschool because that is actually the
not written
category of
that
people.
yet.
Huh?
I've
What?
not written that yet.
But that is the territory we're talking about because
Yeah.
you and I were both, me through you,
Mm,
exposed to, wow, there are all these people
yeah.
who you've just described
Mm,
who are activists, young and running
Mm.
young people running NGOs,
Yeah.
working with agencies who are actually in nature-based solution, nature-based world,
Mm.
and are just looking for information, ideas,
Mm.
community, right? It's actually
Like
quite
I
hard to
feel what
find.
you say is right. It's
Yeah,
community because anyone can talk about sustainability, right?
yeah,
But
sure,
within that spectrum of sustainability, what works in your place, in
yeah,
your context, in your industry, at your level, may be very
yeah,
different. So the
sure,
idea is to look at it as a matrix and go like, oh, okay, these things
right,
match, and these are
right,
things that I want to try,
yeah.
or these are the jobs that
Matrix
I
is
want to go
a
for in the future. Yeah,
Matrix is an interesting way to describe it because I think another thing that happens is when we do the kind of work we do, I think sometimes we feel we're in our own space,
yeah,
which is very, very determined by actually our own constraints, the
yeah,
structure of our actual environment, who we're dealing with. We
yeah,
feel as if it's a very, but actually, when you actually start, that's how we have a lot to talk about with each other because
yeah,
even though we might do different things, we
yeah,
actually find the analogies, we actually find
mm,
the commonalities of
yeah,
this. And I think that's the other thing with stories. They actually help us understand our thing a bit better.
yeah.
Sometimes just because you're just seeing a little bit of a analogy here.
And there are new stories being formed as well. Like
True.
I remember, like when we first talked about meatless meat,
Sure. Sure.
right? Early in the early days, it was like I was like, I don't think it tastes nice, Chris. Then you go like, it's okay, I'm gonna try, and then you make some like mind blowing recipe, and I was convinced, and like, okay, it's not beans, it's something I don't know what it is, tofu, blah blah blah, but that process of learning something new came from tasting your food. It came from having a conversation about tempeh being over fermented and changing its profile and then
Yeah.
being consumed in a sambal. So the story wasn't verbal, it was experiential. And then
Yeah. So
today
the
there's so
story
many more things available for that.
the story changes as your knowledge base changes as well, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So I mean, part of that is because I've gone beyond understanding basic protein structure of
Yep.
plant-based. I'm moving into flavor. How can we improve flavor,
Yep.
fermentation methods? I'm also interested in local resource
Yep.
rather than because otherwise we're looking at very, very American-centric development in this
Yes.
plant-based world.
Yep, yep, yep. And so that's the context
Even
that I'm trying to set.
yeah,
With the
yeah,
writing that I'm doing, I'm trying to set the context of what have I done
yeah,
that can offer you an insight. You will
yeah,
still make mistakes. Please do not
yeah,
think that whatever that's written or whatever we discuss means that you will never make mistakes, because
yeah,
sometimes those are the learning moments, that you have an hypothesis, you have an idea of something, you try it with your community, with your group, with your audience, and then it kind of doesn't work as well. But it's
yeah,
a learning moment to find out, okay, now that it didn't excite people as much as I thought it would, what from the feedback, the reaction of the audience, can I now make another hypothesis and offer another entry point? And I think that's how we've been learning, even for nature class, right? Like we
yeah,
had a conversation about nature class, and we talked about maybe giving kids more playtime would be a differentiator. So
yeah,
these conversations are not just something that you discuss, but you actually have to start figuring out, how does the space work, who's gonna babysit, what are the boundaries for these things, how do you communicate boundary. And I think, and that's why we go back to the fact that with nature education, it is exposure to the same site over
yeah.
multiple times that gives them the confidence, that builds the resilience, that allows us to offer more risk play. So these kind of things require some knowledge from the consumer. So only when you understand a certain thing, once you have valued why going back to the same site multiple times is important, as opposed to just going for a field trip to a new place every time, then you understand, you can participate in the elevation of the process. And I think that's where we are going with like nature education and stuff.
Actually, the plant-based thing is quite interesting because that's also a
Yep.
very good example about conflicting stories.
Yep.
Because the story about plant-based, as it's told here,
Mm.
is that it is a religious pursuit or it's a cultural pursuit. You're supposed to you're supposed to be a
Vegetarianism. Yeah.
vegan. You're a Buddhist vegan or you're
Uh,
a Hindu vegan, and it's
mm,
looked through that lens. But that's not the lens I'm looking through. I'm looking
yeah,
through a
yeah.
lens of environmentalism. Uh,
Ethical.
I want the ability to about resources. You know, it's really
Mm,
about better farming methods,
yeah.
uh, hum, uh, trying to be more humane. You know, I'm trying to eat less animal now that I
Mm,
know. You know, now that our knowledge is shifting about the experience of animals, you know, we are learning more that they're sentient, they're intelligent. It actually is actually quite difficult to navigate this. I don't know if you
yeah.
know, you're getting more and more, you know, like Oprah says, you know, when you know better, you do better. And it's a
Yeah.
little bit like that. You really don't want, like, I can't eat chicken. I don't really eat chicken very much because
Right.
I just see that farmed in the battery cage, you know, it's like, ugh,
Mm,
you know, and I don't want to do that. I want to try and avoid that.
yeah.
So to weave this new story about plant-based also, so I'm trying to say it's actually heritage is a very strong local heritage. We have a big history of eating a very plant-based diet. You know,
Yeah.
we've had buffet and tofu. You know, we
Mm.
didn't really eat very much meat, you know,
I mean,
when
we had
we
different sources of protein.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we didn't even source protein from animals so much.
Mm,
You know, in the 70s, we just didn't eat that much meat. That's a product of globalized farming and uh rising income and you know
mm,
many factors have turned it because before that we would eat very small, you know, meat was for flavor,
mm.
uh you know, a little accent in a stir fry, a little bit in a curry.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't
Texture.
like this. Yeah, it wasn't this big like.
No, and then when we ate meat, we ate everything. We ate the skin. We ate the feet. We ate, everything. We ate everything.
Head, the
The
head.
tongue, so yeah. I mean, because I'm Muslim, and when they do the slaughter, you are supposed to eat everything. And so where my mom grew up, they actually bake. No, they barbecue the hoof of the cow. And then they
Oh,
slice it up and you
okay.
eat that. Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. So they eat everything,
So
like
what are they eating the marrow of the hoof?
everything, anything that comes off the cow gets eaten. Yeah. So and
Okay,
and this knowledge of cooking it has
sure.
depleted because these are slow cook process and
Yeah.
usually done as the community, because you don't
Mm,
just cook like four hooves, you cook like a bunch of hooves.
yeah.
So it's like periodical, at the time of the year where you have
And
a
it's so
lot of
funny because you know, my immediate response is, ooh, you know,
yeah, yeah,
because as you distance yourself from it, it actually becomes more difficult to engage with it. And
yeah,
I realized this because I noticed when I was in the West,
yeah,
I remember like going to the mission with a friend,
yeah.
and I think I ate a stew of some kind, and I wasn't so concerned about what was in the stew.
Mm,
And he was like, "Oh, what's that?" He said exactly, "Is that hoof? Is that a hoof?" But now I'm actually not so great at this. I went to Bangkok on vacation, and I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can eat that." You know, just these steaming piles of blubbery meat. I was like, "I don't know where that's from. I don't know which part of the animal that is, but I can't do
right,
it."
right, right, right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to storytelling in leadership and business. So we talked
Yep,
about education, which is kind of
yep,
our lane. Uh, you're doing this new thing. Oh yeah, meant to say that we are actually going to be publishing uh, a glossary of the Rimba animals, so it's a little bit more extended information,
yep,
so that if you know once the interest is sparked with the card playing, they can go a little deeper into the subject.
yep,
Okay, moving into storytelling in leadership and business, and I have another quote from this guy called Scott Galloway, who's a professor at NYU, and I've been following him. He does something called you know, he does a lot of trend predictions. I've always been interested in what he has to say because I think a lot of what's happening is already known. You know,
mm,
that famous book about robots is we already know the future. It already exists. It just exists in a very small quantity.
right.
only in a very, very limited amount of people know about it. But if you have the wherewithal to actually understand how to scale it or project it in your mind,
Mm,
you could actually win at the game because you can see a pattern in this.
mm,
So yeah, so I've always been interested in because that's what he does. He's looking at trends in product and information,
mm.
the tech world, stuff like that. So his quote is, entrepreneurs are all imposters who must deploy a fiction, i.e. a story,
Yep.
that captures imaginations and
Yep.
capital to pull the future forward and turn rhyme into reason. So he's basically saying that, to develop a product, it's about developing a brand story.
Yep.
It's the power of that brand story that is going to raise
Get you the
capital.
tipping point. Yep.
It's going to raise capital,
Yep.
and then B, it's going to convince the consumer that it's something that he needs and wants. You know,
Yep.
and if you think about really successful brand stories, if you think of like Nike, just do it. They
Mm.
captured just the whole feeling of the brand in just that one phrase,
Yeah, because it's so
which
hard to
they,
exercise, right? Just do it.
uh,
That's it. It's so hard to get
yeah,
yourself
it's
to
just like,
exercise.
yeah, just cut,
So
cut
hard
through
to
the
start.
cut. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
repetitive stuff every day. Yeah,
And then
so exciting.
they even managed to condense it further in their logo with a tick.
Yeah,
Do it, do
done.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that was a very brilliant
Yeah.
branding.
So that is actually about, so storytelling is actually about brand development. And I feel that sometimes when I look at Malaysian businesses, they don't know it. They're not practicing this enough to really be on a world stage for this. I think it's coming. I think we're too early enough. We've been what they call primary. We sell rubber and tin and stuff like that. We
Primary
don't do.
resources.
Yeah, yeah. We're not
Yeah,
the people who put we don't tell, we're not making Nike shoes. We're making
yeah,
the rubber that goes into the shoe.
yeah.
So we've yet to get to the point where we had to build these stories, but uh, that that moment is fast approaching now.
I think
If
we're
we
doing it
don't
with
do
like
it,
coffee shops. We're very
yeah,
good
if
at
we if
coffee
we
shop
don't
marketing.
do it soon, we are going to lose out in on this world in the game.
Yeah,
It's actually quite problematic. And then the other, and then also business requires funding.
yep,
Uh, you need to convince other people to get on board now. You can't
yep,
you can't just start a small thing now. It's
yep.
got to be it's got to be put together.
And it's a minimum value product.
Yeah, yeah. So that's business, and I understand that thing about branding because I that was my job when I worked for big American brands. The idea of the brand story was so important that you were not allowed to. Would actually they had lawyers, they had design team, they had like executives on the design team, and they had lawyers to just check that your brand messaging was contained. When I worked at Levi's, actually, the legal part of it was actually much stronger because a lot of people perceive Levi's as a very rich brand and
Okay,
easy to sue brand. So from a design point of view, you couldn't just do stuff. It had to be
right.
really, really. You couldn't have something that might cause carpal tunnel syndrome or something that they could
Yeah.
sue you on. So it was
Okay.
much more managed.
Right.
Mm.
Fun fact,
Okay,
I
that's
wrote a lesson using Levi's as, or yeah, using jeans as the narrative for ethical consumption and labor.
okay.
And so if you deconstruct the jeans, you have cotton as a resource, you have all the copper that's used for all the buttons and other metals for the buttons, and you have the labor of growing the cotton, selling the cotton to a thread maker that then weaves it into
Sure.
the denim pants, and then the staining of the denim pants is like another person, and then it moves on to being cut and being tagged and labeled, and a little bit of history about the jeans and why there is I can't remember the word specifically, but there's a word for that piece of leather that they stick on the back of the brand
Oh
that you
yeah,
buy the
yeah.
brand. So
The
that was
the
put because every other person who the cowboy working class American at the time who were wearing these heavy denim jeans for work, they were being copied by other people claiming that they are also Levi's. So Levi's was the
oh
first company
okay
that made that leather label on the back
okay
of the pants. So that was their copyright. And they were
yeah
the first jean maker that had that label on the back.
yeah.
So yeah, we
Some
thought a little
some
bit of
other
history
some
and
other because I work for Levi's, so some
mm,
other elements there. Do you know it's so controlled
yeah,
that they you almost cannot an American company almost cannot afford to buy denim from another country.
yeah,
It's just not allowed in.
yeah,
The taxes are so high that you are forced to buy American denim.
yeah.
And yet it has still
Survived.
there is a world denim business.
Yep,
You know, there's denim being spun and woven in Japan.
yep,
It's coming out of India.
yep,
And then it's sort of shifting to other parts of the world, not into the States.
yep,
So the States is much more control, unless you're prepared to pay that difference. That's why,
yep, yep.
that's why, when I first went to the States, like a 501 was like $20.
Not so $20 anymore.
No, and then diesel was like $100 or $200. I can't remember what.
Yeah,
Whoa,
yeah.
why?
Mm.
So, yeah. And then, and then there's the trends that drive things like, the self edge, which is just coming out of a narrow machine.
Yep.
There's ring spun, which means it's just an uneven yarn. So now they actually fake an uneven yarn. It's technically fake. They just put a
Technically fake.
rhythm. They put a rhythm to it, so it just slows down for a
Fraction of a
nanosecond.
second. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No, but see,
And
these
then
are all the stories that kids today have no clue about when they buy
they don't
jeans
have clue. You
because
have no idea what you
they
have no
don't know
idea
what goes
what
into
was
it.
done before the gene. Because the other thing that they would do is the washing and the scrubbing. I remember
Yes,
like one of the reasons I thought, oh, that's a fashion industry was I thought this is
the seasoned look.
crazy. There are women in China using pumice stones to scrub the
Yeah,
targeted position of your jeans to create the oil. Crazy. Adding back oil for your mechanics jeans and stuff. Ah, this is
see,
crazy.
a farmer would have just used it and worn it out in on the right
Right.
places.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but that's the difference between fashion and fast fashion.
Yeah.
Utilitarian fashion, which is where it began. Which is yeah, the
Yeah. Like
story, the
the,
story.
the the jeans was literally Europeans wearing tweed jackets that needed something else
Yep,
to do gold mining. So they just pulled the canvas off their wagons
yep.
and made clothes out of it.
Mm,
And that turned into something different.
nice.
Okay, moving out of business to leadership is another interesting area because the storytelling capabilities of a leader
Mm.
can actually, like Obama. If you think of Obama, what a
Yeah, he
brilliant
was a very good storyteller for sure.
orator and storyteller. He captured imagination.
Yep,
He, People knew at his first speech at the Democratic Convention that he will be the first black primary president.
right.
They knew just hearing that speech
Yep,
that they were looking at the future first black president. I thought that was pretty amazing. Uh, Recently, I've been quite fascinated by the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney,
yep,
who actually, sometimes it's about timing as well. He came into power in 2025, riding an anti-Trump thing. Trump was
yep.
really um, having that crazy Canada pushback, and Mark Carney fought it. And that's what brought it. He had such he narrated the story of Canadian, and he actually had like a phrase called like elbows up. You
Yep.
know, you're not gonna push it. You know,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and
Holding the
so
line, holding the line.
yeah, so he got into power that way. And then recently he was at is it Davos or Davos? I never
Davos.
at the summit.
Yeah.
He actually made headlines as being a nobody knew he could be so powerful as a speaker.
Right.
He could be so. In fact, somebody described them as the kind of leader Macron wants to be,
Yeah.
the kind of leader that Starmer is too afraid to be.
Mm.
And someone who can actually speak up to Trump. And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, this guy is now developed an oratorial storytelling skill, and it is storytelling. He's talking about Canadian values
Yeah. Yeah.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
universal values,
Yeah.
and then
Because
shortly
it's a
after that,
multicultural country. Yeah.
yeah. And then shortly after that, he goes back and he attends a media event. And then he draws attention to this big heated rivalry, which actually is Canadian government funded.
Yeah.
And he takes responsibility for greenlighting it. He tells the story about how the creator uh, was actually told by an American distributor,
Right.
streaming agency, that he needed to change the plot.
Right.
And the creator didn't want to do it. So he went back to a small Canadian uh, distributor, Crave, and did it his way. He was given creative control to do it
Yeah.
his way.
Yeah.
So, in describing all this, he's actually talking about Canadian soft power. He says Canada is the
Yeah.
place that is about
We incubate
equality,
these things. Yeah.
about creativity, about
Yeah.
inclusiveness. He can
Yeah.
tell this story without fear.
Mm.
I thought it was really clever, and he was funny. He was really, so it is a
I think
that
storytellers have what you call oh my god,
charisma.
yes, charisma.
Yeah, you
And I
need charisma. Yeah,
yeah, but not everyone's born with it. Sometimes it's encouraged. Like you try a dad joke and then it hits, right? And then you go like, oh, I'm gonna try
yeah,
that again. And over time you can build this persona. But some
yeah,
people do have it, buckets of it. And they're really good. Like I think
yeah,
Trevor Noah is one of those people who can tell very
yeah,
jarring stories and people walk away agreeing or understanding more about it or
yeah.
even being curious to reflect further. And I think it is an unfair trait in some people that they're
Yeah,
so good. Yeah.
another interesting thing to think about here is we're also living in a world with a lot of information. That means
Yeah.
your story has to rise above a 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
You have to rise above a lot of noise, a lot of
Yeah.
density.
Yeah.
So you really got to, it has to, there's a different need now for that kind of storytelling,
Yeah.
and that's maybe why we don't see many very successful ones. It just takes a
Yeah. There's
certain,
so much competition out there for
yeah.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and also this idea of telling a story in a slightly different way,
Mm.
uh, I think a new way of telling the story is what captures a new audience,
True.
or an ability for an audience to listen also.
Yeah.
Heated rivalry is one. It is a
Yeah.
tough,
Yeah.
it's a tough subject
Yeah.
that a lot of people will just turn their TV off, but actually it's
Yeah.
become such a discussion point that
Yeah.
people are quite compelled to just check it out to see what is it about.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
the fact that they're two high performing athletes, not compromising on the ice rink to
yeah,
to be the best player, and
yeah,
at the same time, there's all these like backstory that's happening.
yeah,
Individually growing, collectively growing. I think yeah, it's definitely a very new way of telling the stories because I think we've gone past that B grade movie watching. We've done all of that already. And then now it's starting. We're maturing as an audience, and the story
yeah.
gets deeper, and the storytellers get better as well.
And then the stories are also being distributed in slightly different ways. So
Mm.
I just send you the links to watch this either Raspberry, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
Once
got past the first
once
one.
once you have, I've got to start sending you some of the related stuff because the memes around it
Right.
are hilarious. They're just
But it's
so funny.
six episodes. How are they generating so much content
Oh,
around 6 episodes? Yeah, it's quite mind blowing.
it's based around all kinds of memes and quotes and
Right.
really quite interesting. And also, it's about another other layers of creativity. So,
Right.
right, so for example, one of the things that they were doing is they're re-editing. They're taking like one of the ways that the series actually shot into the opening. They only put out trailers, right?
Okay.
But they had such a fascinated audience that they were starting to create what it's actually a thing now. It's called an edit.
Okay.
So they will take the trailer and recut it and put their own soundtrack on them. So it has a slightly different point of view.
Okay.
So people are starting to watch, oh, did you watch that edit? You know?
Right. I think it started with these guys who did how did it end or something. There was this group of YouTube edit like people
Yeah.
who would take a movie and end it differently. How it would end if, for instance, in
Right.
Titanic,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
discovered that both of them could fit on the door, and
Yeah.
then they both like lived, and then the story would be
Yeah.
very different. So
Yeah.
yeah, how could it end? I think that's something. The name was something
Also,
else.
the mechanics of information distribution also help this kind. Like I've always hated the idea of TikTok, but I have to say I have it only on like one of my machines, my iPad. And whenever I have it on, I'm like 40 minutes in, I'm oh shit, I'm still watching.
You need to put a timer.
Because it's dopamine, it's very addictive, it's very
Yes.
short,
And it
attention,
already reads what you are,
yeah.
what
And the algorithm is
expecting
really
your consumption.
it's like heroin, really. You just take one thing, you watch it for I don't know how they're calculating your
Yeah,
engagement,
I
but
guess how
they
fast you move away from if you swipe away while it's halfway running. I don't know, something.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think the other thing about leadership and storytelling is it is also how you uh respond to an immediate issue. Like in Malaysia, we've got a lot of, like, for instance, um how we were affected by a lot of financial scandal in Malaysia, and the leadership responding to that, because Malaysians felt scammed as a collective. It doesn't matter if
yeah,
you're Chinese, you're Indian, you're Malay, we all felt scammed. And
yeah.
when the leadership responds to it, how they respond to it, how then when we go out and talk about it as, neighbors and colleagues and stuff. And I think stories do morph and change, but good leadership gives us a good sense of why we are rallying around something. And I think we will see how elections will you know, garner interest based on this kind of leadership storytelling. Because I
Yeah.
think we've had this conversation a lot about the parties talking about certain things, but there's no green agenda, there's no sustainability agenda.
No,
And
no,
are we
yeah,
going to keep voting for them? Are we,
yeah.
but nobody is talking about a sustainability agenda. So,
Also,
yeah,
I think this is something I notice actually is, stories are also about what you leave out. If you don't tell that part of the story,
yeah.
you have a different impression of the
Yeah,
story. And one of the things
he
that
is telling a story without saying the story. Yeah.
yeah, because one of the things that fascinated me about, there are two big things that are talked about in Malaysia. One is corruption.
Yes.
And then recently, I don't know if you noticed, there's a lot of things about scams,
Yes.
right? But nobody talks about, when it comes to the corruption, there are no stories about the corruptors. Have you
Yes.
noticed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
But all the other people. Yeah.
Ah, they talked about the corruptees, Najib, but they don't talk about the billionaires who are corrupting him.
Yeah.
Like
Or
when there was some,
participating in the profiting of those things.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I remember when they actually arrested him,
Yeah.
and there was some photographs of when they were taking the evidence away.
Hmm.
Actually, some of that evidence, I never saw a follow up. They were actually gifts from billionaires. They were actually from known billionaires. Did they mention their names? No. Was there a story about how billionaires are feeding into their corruption?
Yep. 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 I mean,
No.
Jeffrey Epstein's case. The only person currently in jail for that case is the one lady.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Everybody else
Very
is still
similar, yes.
there.
Very
You know,
analogous. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
very slowly is the documents that they are hoarding and hiding being
Yeah.
released, and so much of it has already been destroyed. Was it
Yeah.
5 million pages or some insane number like that for this case. And I don't know, it's just I cannot reconcile the data. It's crazy.
Also, how this construction of story with important parts left out or hyper focus on
Omission.
certain parts
Yeah.
can give you a very confused idea. So I'm writing a piece right now about kue
Okay.
for my other Substack about the history of kue. I mean, I have an
What's the
agenda
word
too.
for kueh in English?
Okay, that's complicated because is it a sweet meat? Is it a cake? Is it a dessert?
It's a
You know how it's the same with like
steamed dessert. Steamed dessert. Steamed. It's not pudding. It's like a custard. Custard. Steamed cake.
yeah. So
Okay. Yeah.
I'm actually using two very credible resources, and one of them Christopher Town, who wrote a book called The Way of Kue. He's much more inclusive. So he's saying kue can be steamed, fried, baked, fermented, boiled.
What's a fermented kueh?
Um, there are things like fermentation is what makes it rise, and then they steam it,
Oh, okay, okay, like appam.
something like that. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, makes sense. Makes
So
sense.
there are a few variables. It's like so how it's made is not such a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, the ingredients are also changing. So sometimes the story about kue is about it's Malay kue. It's made with rice flour. It's made with pandan. But actually, that's just the early story about kue. You know,
Mm,
they actually don't tell you a lot of the other stories along the way about the Indian influence. About
right.
putu and
Yeah.
uh, Chinese influence. I mean, for example, they used rice flour since Majapahit times, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't very finely milled. The Chinese brought that. The Chinese brought that kind of finely milled. And then you have kue kochi. So it's a different kind of a kue. So it's actually
Yeah.
that story told in that kind of timeline is what I'm trying to do because it
Right.
gives you a better understanding. And then my agenda is, being Eurasian, I'm quite interested in what did the colonials bring?
You're right.
What did the hybrid people bring as well? Because I
Right.
think the hybridity is also interesting. That
Yeah. Because then you mix
native
influences together.
the native wife in the kitchen with the husband working for the VOC or whatever, there is something going on. And so then the colonials bring dairy, they bring a kind of food technology about eggs, like custards and stuff like that. Uh,
Baking Dutch
yeah,
ovens.
because the Portuguese used egg whites in clarification of wine. They used egg whites in the starching of monastic habits.
Yeah.
They had a lot of egg yolks left over.
Right.
So it was actually a zero waste sort of
Ketat.
so that became so they changed so maybe Kaya existed before the Assyri Kaya, but they brought a much creamy they made a creamier version of it. And that's what we know now. Kaya as a spreadable.
Is
Um,
lemon curd also a yolk base
it is
jam,
there's an egg in it. Yeah.
right?
So it's a European kind of food technology.
Mm,
The other thing about it is actually, the other variable with kue is how do you eat it? S- You know, so one of the definitions is it's usually eaten outside a meal. You don't eat kue at the main meal.
yeah.
It's a snack, it's a
Yeah.
breakfast, or
Mm,
it's maybe a
tea
dessert.
time. Yeah.
So that shows you. So
Not
anyway,
quite a
so
dessert, but like yeah, like a filler in the
yeah,
middle of your day.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how we eat kaya now is very, very rely on the fact that it was turned into this spreadable jam.
Mm,
Because before, actually, in Christopher Dunn's book, the early Puranakans talked about cutting kaya. You ate kaya
like a
as a
butter.
like a slice. Yeah, yeah.
That kind of reminds me of kueh bakul. Do you know what's kueh bakul?
Maybe not as thick as kue bakul, but it was
Mm.
definitely firmer.
But kueh bakul has a variety. Some of them are tacky, some of them are harder. And
Okay,
the
yeah.
harder ones they slice and they put it on
Yeah.
like the fried ubi goreng. They squish
Oh,
it together. Yes.
and then the other part with how we eat kaya now. I mean,
Right.
we see kaya and kue, but we
Yes.
mainly eat kaya
The
as a
bread.
spread in toast, which actually required a very British colonial. breakfast and tea time kind
Yeah,
of.
because you eat it with eggs as well. If you go to a
We
kopitiam,
never ate that. We never ate that way
kaya toast
before.
with eggs, right? Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a new way of eating. That's okay. So the story about kueh is actually quite. And what happens is you find people inhabiting the part of the story that they want to inhabit. The Peranakans will sit
Yeah.
in their part of the story.
Yeah.
The the Malays will sit in their part of the story. For example, like Chinese. It's interesting because I went out to do some errands and I had lunch and I noticed that they're starting to sell Chinese New Year kueh, right?
Yes, it's coming out already.
And half of them are actually European Eurasian influenced kueh.
Pineapple
Bahulu,
curry.
kueh bahulu is actually from a Portuguese food technology, tarts.
Right.
There's another one that looks like a lotus
Oh, the crispy one.
with, with the holes.
Okay.
That's also a very European
Kueh
technology
bunga
dipping
mawar.
it
I think that's what they call it, like a
or
rose
leyong.
crisp or something.
Yeah, it's a rose, something rose or leyong or
Ah,
something. Yeah, kueh leyong. And then love
loyang,
that
loyang,
is
loyang.
loyang.
Ah,
Kueh
ah, ah.
kapit, kueh
Kueh
kapit,
kap-
which is a very classic one. That actually in Indonesia is called kueh blanda because it's a Dutch.
Ah,
It's a Dutch tool that creates that
right.
kueh. But that's all left out of the story about Chinese New Year kueh. So that is a sort of a wrong I'm trying to right as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think as so I I see myself as part of the diaspora, an Indian diaspora,
So
you know?
yeah, yeah,
And the reason why I say that is because I understand a little bit of the Malay, like cultural aspect of being
yeah,
in Malaysia, but I also understand the Indian aspect of which I was raised, right? So if you think of the Chinese, and Laiman is the Chinese, and we've
yeah.
kind of talked about this a little bit because his mom's Chuchu, right? If you think about it, when his mother's generation, they were shop owners. They had a sundry shop where they sold rice and they sold chicken and they had like pigeons and all sorts of things besides all the sundry shop stuff. Um, for them, they learn how to make cookies at school because of the home economics class. His mother's recipe book is from her school days.
Ah,
Her family never made
sure.
cookies for Chinese New Year.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get
You
that.
know,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
closest they had was peanut brittle, you know,
Right.
and that was just something sweet that they would have with tea, and people would come and play cards, and that was the New Year, and everything else was
Yeah.
like roasted duck because it's a tutu thing, and they had like I think vegetable stuff and some pork, and they are all items whose names associate to happiness, wealth, prosperity, fun,
Yeah.
energy,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very culturally interpreted that they then make this kind of kueh because it has this sound, or this kind of kueh
Yeah,
because
and
it has this
it was
connotation.
actually very
So it's just
fenced off because
reinterpretation.
it was very fenced off because actually there was no information sharing about it until I remember it was actually the 70s when it was actually a Eurasian woman called Alice Handy that wrote one of the very early cookbooks.
Right.
And then this sort of new middle class started to actually, like we did, we started to cook rendang.
Mm.
We would never do that before because we don't know how to.
Yep, 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 yep.
And the Western literary whatever is not writing local recipes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Gotta
You
be
can
here.
learn how to yeah, you can learn how to make a cake or a cookie, but only in the 70s did a local writer write recipes.
Yep.
And so actually one day when I posted a photo of
Love
a
cake.
pie, a
Oh,
chicken
okay.
pie,
Okay.
okay, which I grew up eating as a every week we'd eat a chicken pie. And then do you remember Derek? Derek who worked with Nani?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
he reached out to me and said, "Why is it that I know this?" And then I realized
But
actually
he
his
is a
mom.
little bit Eurasian.
Well, I think his mother was Indian. I think he's Chindian. He's Chinese
Yeah,
Indian,
he's
right?
mixed somewhere, yeah.
I think his mother is of that age that actually read the Ellis
Ah, makes sense.
how to make a pie. Because you would try it. You would try to make those things. You know.
Nice.
So yeah. Um, oh, You know what? We're running out of time. So
Okay. So we end at pies.
I think it's actually quite a big subject. So let me just okay, I think we're gonna have to skip the other sections and
What were
just
the other sections?
uh well, one of them is actually how to construct stories. It's like
That's a whole podcast by itself.
yeah, I think that's yeah. And then I was also going to talk about the stories that we've been telling. Like
Right.
I've written something. Like I wrote an article called "Eat Your Land." So our essays are stories about how we how we're actually talking about our philosophy about what we want to do and teach
Yep.
in a story. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So we may have to return to that. But I do
Mm,
want to wrap up by going back to the article that kind of triggered my interest in it.
mm,
And it's really and the article actually is really interesting because it's much more constructive about it describes the role of storytelling and how narratives shape reality and what it takes to rewrite them. So it's so if you want to affect systemic change, how you talk and how you create these stories.
yep.
Uh, and one of the things that we've already talked about is we actually have to change some of the ideas that people already believe about those stories.
Yep.
Like I said about plant based, here people believe that that's a story about religion, it's about veganism, it's about, a kind of a
Yep.
cultural practice, when actually
Yeah.
that is not the
It's
story
really
we're trying
it's
to tell.
really about sustainability because as the
That's
world
what I think.
changes,
Yeah.
in climate change,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
will need to find different sources of food. And can we sustain eating so much rice as a Asian country? Because
Yeah.
we're not producing enough. So then our
Yeah. We
staple
don't.
may change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then let me just do some description. So it's saying that stories aren't just narratives. They form the mental architecture behind policy, technologies, brands, institutions,
Mm,
even cities we live in. They influence where money flows, who gets heard, what's
yeah.
rewarded, and what's ignored, which is actually something we've been touch on. I think that's quite interesting. Some stories are just buried.
Yeah.
We didn't, I mean, that's my interest in the Eurasian story because it's
Yep.
buried. It's literally, people just literally don't know anything about that community.
Yep.
We ourselves are partly to blame.
Yep.
We've constructed some very odd stories. We've left the country.
Mm,
No, there are no storytellers here.
mm,
So the story's not known for those reasons.
yep.
Okay, so on that note, I think we'll wrap up and maybe we'll come back to it. Actually, maybe it will push it forward and talk maybe more precisely about some of the stories that we have already told, that actually what we're trying to solve with those
Yep.
stories.
Yep. Yep.
All
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Right.
It's been a week. We'll see you next week.
Take
Bye.
care.